All right, let's get into something really beautiful and personal today. It's a story that comes from a piece called The Quiet Rebellion of the Balcony Garden. And it's this incredibly powerful look at despair, but also about those tiny, almost invisible things that can somehow pull us back from the brink. And really, the whole story, it just hangs on this one powerful line. You read this and you know right away, this is not just about gardening. Not at all. It's about resilience, right? About finding some kind of lifeline when you feel like you're completely adrift.
So to really get that line, we have to go back. We have to understand where it's coming from. And it's a place where the world itself just started to fade to gray.
The author talks about being in this deep, deep depression, and their apartment, it basically became a mirror of what was going on inside. It wasn't just a bad mood. It was the whole environment. The air itself felt heavy. The lights seemed dull. Everything just kind of stopped.
And it's always the small things that paint the clearest picture, isn't it? Simple, everyday tasks suddenly feel like climbing a mountain. And this is so important. It's not about being lazy. It's the inertia of depression. It's like this physical weight that's just holding you down. Yep. And just like the dishes, you see the clothes on the floor. It's another sign that time has just frozen. Another layer on this picture of a life that's just completely ground to a halt.
And then there's the balcony garden, which became this perfect, heartbreaking mirror. As the author was fading, so were the plants. The leaves turning yellow, the stems drooping. Those weren't just dying plants. They were a physical sign of what was happening inside. A quiet, shared withering away. Okay, but here's the thing. In the middle of this complete shutdown, one little thing kept going. Just one single action that, for whatever reason, refused to stop.
And let's be super clear about this. This action was not coming from a place of hope. Not even close. The author says they were too heavy to care. Wow. What a perfect way to describe the weight of depression, right? The massive effort it takes just to exist, never mind taking care of something else. And yet, somehow, every few days, they'd go out to the balcony and water the plants. It was this stubborn, almost unconscious habit that just survived when literally everything else had been let go.
This is so crucial. This wasn't some act of self-help or trying to get better. It was totally mechanical. The author explains it was as simple as this. They still had to drink water to stay alive, and it just felt wrong not to give the plants water too. That's it. No deep, profound meaning. Just a routine. And this is where the story turns. That one simple, mechanical act, it led to something completely unexpected. Something that honestly felt impossible at the time. It's a really fascinating question when you think about it. We live in this world that's always telling us to give 110%, to hustle, to optimize. But what happens when all you have to give is the bare minimum? What happens when you can only offer just enough to survive? So that's what the author did. Just kept going through the motions, just providing that little bit of water. And then, about 3 weeks later, something changed. And bam, here's the turning point. Despite everything, the neglect, the lack of any real intention, life just found a way. It didn't just survive, it put out new growth. That phrase, dared to bloom again, isn't that just perfect? It's like this little act of defiance from a plant. Seeing that little bloom, it wasn't just a, oh, that's nice moment. It was a lightning bolt, a huge realization. The garden, which had been this perfect mirror of decay, was suddenly mirroring something completely different. It hit them. The plants didn't care if they were happy. They didn't need a healed or better gardener. All they needed were the absolute basics. A little water, a little light, a little bit of time. The bare minimum was actually enough. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? We put this crushing weight on ourselves, this idea that to recover, we have to achieve this huge, impossible goal of suddenly being better. But the plants showed a much simpler truth. Recovery can start small. It can start with just the bare minimum, just enough to hang on. And this whole experience gives a name to this idea, which is just fantastic. The quiet rebellion. It's this idea that the absolute smallest act of care for a plant, for yourself, can be this huge act of defiance against despair. It's interesting. This actually connects to a real psychological concept called behavioral activation, which is basically the idea that you don't have to wait for motivation to act. Sometimes the action itself comes first. Now, it's really important to get this part right. The author isn't saying, my garden magically cured my depression.
It didn't save them. It was more like an anchor, a small, living thing that just stubbornly refused to let them disappear completely. It kept them tethered, you know?
So, what can we all take away from this? Well, the author turns this very personal story into some really gentle, practical advice for anyone who might be in that same dark place.
And the advice is beautifully simple. It's not some complicated 10-step plan. It's just water something. Start so small. Allow yourself to just hang on by a thread because you know what? Sometimes that's more than enough. And the biggest thing, just keep going, even when it feels totally and completely pointless.
Because that first tiny action, that one glass of water for a plant, or heck, for yourself, it's not just a chore. It can be the first shot fired, the very first move in a quiet rebellion against that awful feeling that nothing matters anymore.
So it really makes you think, doesn't it? If just a little water can bring a dying plant back to life, what happens if you offer yourself just that bare minimum of care? What impossible, stubborn, defiant new thing might just start to grow for you?